Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Arna Sahu, host of Arna's News, and if you are a newcomer, welcome to this channel. I give you warm greetings digitally. Today we are with a special guest, Miss Anna Grace. As the head of AI product commerce at Meta and an avidly esteemed member at Chief, an organization that allows senior women to strengthen their interpersonal and leadership skills, Miss Anna is such an inspiring person of such amazing character. As a role model of mine, I too aim to be of such capable and accomplished qualities. So, with that said, if you're here again, thank you for clicking back to this podcast episode, and be sure to come back to this channel very soon for a newer one. Okay, I have a few questions for you. So my first one is, what made you interested in technology/STEM and educating others?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your blog. I'm super excited, or your podcast, super excited to be here and to meet you as well. So hello and hello to your audience. So for me, what got me excited about this? Well, I'll tell you that I actually have a degree in sociology of all things. And so I was very passionate about how individuals interact with their environment and people around them. And this is super important when it comes to tech, right? Because we're engaging with other people in sort of the metaverse space or on the internet. We're engaging with technology and tools. So it's really interesting to come from like a non-specific technical background, but still be very engaged in the social sciences and how people intersect with technology. So for me, that became a passion point that I rallied sort of my career around.
That's really cool. Okay, my next question is, what are the best resources that have helped you find your career path?
That's a great question. So I think that the most important thing in a career is relationships. Making sure that you are staying plugged in and connected to people that inspire you and that are doing work that is exciting for you. So early in my career, like I mentioned, I had a degree in sociology, and there was a little internet service provider that was opening up like not that far from my home in Houston. And it was just a husband and wife team. They were building this brand new ISP to get people connected to the internet for the first time, really, in our nation. And there was little companies like this springing up and around, but nobody really kind of fully understood the power of the internet at the time. But very few people really did. And so I knew that I was kind of good at sales and marketing because in high school and in college, I had like sold Mary Kay cosmetics and I'd done some telemarketing back in school to, pay bills. And so I thought that I could maybe help this mom and pop get some sales of their, internet service. So I knocked on their door and introduced myself. And they said, well, we really can't pay you because we don't have that much money. But if you would be willing to work on my commission, we will pay you out of whatever you bring in the door. So I went around Houston and put these little boxes around town that said 2 weeks of free internet access. And then I used my telemarketing skills that I had learned in college. And I called up everybody that had put their little name in the box. And I signed them up for 2 weeks free, right? And then we got them engaged in a sort of internet subscription. And so I would say, definitely like the ability to sort of be curious about something and try, an area and say, I think I could maybe do something. And then when the web started, that husband and wife team said, hey, there's this thing called the web coming, and we need to build a website. And I was like, what is that? How do I do that? And so we opened up a notepad and they taught me how to write the language of the day, HTML, into a notepad. And I built one of the earlier websites, on the internet, just like that. And just basically giving it a try and being willing to fail and make mistakes. And so I would say relationships are critical because the relationships that you build, can carry you through from one opportunity to the next. Staying super curious and making sure that you have, like just an openness to learning, even when things are scary. And even to this day, I do this, right? Like I try to find really challenging and hard things to think about and work on. And then I would say like just being willing to take a chance and fail. I think are pretty critical.
Wow, that's a really cool story. Yeah. My next question for you is, what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
That's good. It is very similar to kind of what I said before, but I think just um, first of all, just fearlessness, right? So when I say fearlessness, I don't mean that you don't have fear. I mean it like breaking down the word fearless. So we're all going to be scared when we do new things and we try we try new roles and such for ourselves. But if you take it as a learning opportunity and you're saying, hey, this may or may not be right for me, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to learn something new. I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm not going to be embarrassed if I make a mistake. In fact, it's making mistakes, it's the failing that actually teaches us the most about what we like and what we don't like. And frankly, helps us find the things that work, right? We have to fail lots in order to find the things that work. So I would say fear less and go for it more. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't try something. You can do anything. You really can.
Okay. Yeah. Um, my next question is, what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
What do I wish I had known? I wish I had known like how important math is. Oh my goodness. I actually have something called dyscalculia, which is it's a form of dyslexia. I also have dyslexia. It's a form of dyslexia that like moves numbers around. So the same way somebody like flips their letters when they have dyslexia, I also flip numbers, which is awesome. When you're taking tests, you can imagine how challenging that is. To do problems. In fact, I really struggled in college because I couldn't pass calculus. I think I failed calculus 3 times. I was just so discouraged, so depressed. And I didn't know that I had dyscalculia. And it wasn't until I actually dropped out of college and then I got married and then later came back to college and was talking to a professor and I told her about what was happening to me and that I just couldn't master this. And she said, have you ever been tested for a disability? And I said I had not. So she's like, you should go. And so I went and got tested. And that's when I found out that I had this, dyslexia and further this dyscalculia. And it really just changed everything for me because I just realized, A, I'm not dumb. I can actually learn and do things well. I just had to overcome, this. And so I would say, I wish I had known earlier. I wish I had kind of known back in elementary school or certainly, moving up through my grades. And I certainly wish I had known in college. I wish somebody had encouraged me to maybe get tested earlier so that I could I could not have struggled with those failures, but again, it's because of those failures that I finally did get tested. And once I was tested, I went back to college and finished my degree. And I was in a much better position to do so. So, again, just encourage people to get involved in academics. It matters. It certainly, the more you can do early. Math is important. Even if you think you're not going to do math in your future, you'll be surprised how math sneaks in there. And if you have any kind of issues learning or whatever, don't be afraid or ashamed of that. Just go get it looked at, and there's lots of things we can do now to help everyone kind of learn. So
Yeah. Okay. And then my next question is, what was a big challenge that you faced?
Oh, a big challenge. I face a lot of challenges all the time. And they come in large and small, right? And they're sort of everyday things that you overcome. I think, gosh, what is a large challenge that I faced that I can share? Well, I would say, certainly what I mentioned before, in the dyslexia and the dyscalculia was an area that I had to overcome. Definitely, insecurity. I will say when I joined Meta, even, I was sort of kind of I'd already kind of been a VP some places and had done a lot of cool things. But coming into my new job, I was a little intimidated because everybody around me were PhDs and incredibly educated. And I just had my bachelor's. And so when I first started, I definitely went through this, the imposter syndrome that everyone talks about. And just felt oh, maybe I'm not as smart as these people, or maybe I don't belong here. They're gonna see right through me any minute now, But again, I go back to some advice that I got from my friend Deb Lou about staying curious. Don't don't worry about if you're not the smartest person in the room. That's actually good. You don't want to be the smartest person because that means, you're learning from others, right? And so learning and listening and being curious, actually is what enables me to take on the really hard challenges. Is I've gone from, again, being in a place of fear and feeling intimidated to fearing less and focusing more on like being curious and learning in the moment.
Yeah, okay. And then I have another question. What is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
Mm. You know what? I think one of the things I hear a lot about product management is that the product manager is the CEO of the product. Like he or she is the boss of the product. And I really don't like that analogy at all. I like to think of the product manager as the director of a symphony, because I'm musical, or if you're into movies, you might say the director of a movie, where, yes, that is their job to sort of bring a lot of people's talents together in service of an outcome, whatever that outcome may be. And so I think it's really important for product managers not to like look at themselves as like, I'm the CEO and I make the decisions, because when you do that, you have blind sides and that you're not considering, and you want the people around you to all be contributing to demystifying, like the blind sides for you, so that you've got clarity and a clear signal all around you of the things that you might need to know before taking decisions together. So, so for product management, I say you should see yourself as that conductor of the orchestra. You don't necessarily have to be able to play the bassoon or play the violin. You didn't necessarily write the music, but it is your job to set the pace, conduct the music and bring all those musicians together to produce something really, really beautiful.
Okay. And my next question is, if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
Oh, you have such good questions. Oh my goodness. What haven't you asked me? Um, I think you asked really good questions. I might say, like maybe talk about a little bit about work-life balance. We can talk about, how to stand up for having balance in your life. I think in a career, it's really easy to start focusing on everything and trying to do everything perfectly. And the real truth is that you can't do everything perfectly all at once, all the time. It's just impossible. So I think it's really, really important that you prioritize certain things. Like one is rest, right? You want to make sure that you're sleeping, and that rest is just so important for our brains. We're learning more and more about the importance of that. The second is, eating well, making sure that you're taking care of your body and eating well, nutritious, good food, nutritious food, not junk food, right? As much as possible. And I would think about, hydrating. I know these sound very simple, but like I literally have my water bottle right here with me because hydration is so important. And, again, it's just so, our bodies are mostly water. Our brains are mostly water. You want to keep them in like peak shape. And then, once you've sort of done that, I would say sort of like prioritizing your mental health. So building in time during your day to do things like, be quiet and sit still, go for a walk. And walks are awesome because they not only give you physical exercise, which is my other one, is like go out and move. They get you out into the sun, get a little bit of, vitamin D. You're maybe walking and, you're not constantly glued to your devices, you're out and looking at nature, and it clears your mind. And that's super, super important. And I think once you have all of that, as you move into times where you've got like family and friends and, maybe children in the future and this kind of thing, you just want to make sure that you're putting everything in the right perspective and you're not overdoing. I see people just overdo their careers, particularly early in their careers, because it's that grinding it out, right? It's that sweat equity. You got to do everything. And the truth is, you just have to do things really well, like do them well. Block your time so that you're making time to do things. You're not procrastinating until the end, but instead you're giving yourself plenty of time to do the work that you need to do. And at the same time, you try to balance so that you're not like staying up all night and doing these things that ultimately deteriorate like our physical and mental health, so that we can't be as effective as we want to be in our lives. So I would say I would prioritize all those things that I mentioned at the beginning and make sure that you've scheduled your day in a way that you can take care of all those like physical, emotional sort of needs. And then, business or your work life is just another piece of that, right? And making sure that even throughout the day that you're carving out time to think, carving out time to breathe, to take that walk. So I think that's one of the areas that people don't talk about too much, just making sure you're taking care of yourself.
Okay. And how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your role?
That's a good question. So I am plugged into a lot of different things. And sometimes, again, going back to the previous question, it can be too much. So you have to think about what is too much information, right? But when it comes to my day, I tend to start my day in like prayer and meditation as much as possible. And so I'm taking in that goodness. And then, I'm looking at some blogs that I read that are like specific to AI, just to understand what's happening in the AI space and what news is going on. I'm also involved with women in product. So I'll, look at the blogs around women in product or, read some things like some of my friends are amazing writers. Go back to like a Deb Blue or an Ami Bora, so many others that I can name are just like writing great content for women in product or really anyone in product. And so I try to consume those kinds of things. And then just generally, I don't try to overload it on like news. I try not to read too much general news. I mean, I keep up with the world. I read a few like Reuters or this kind of thing, just to know kind of what's happening in the world. But I'm not one of those that's like glued to the news cycle and just wants to know every second what's happening. Because frankly, I think it kind of overwhelms me and it overloads me. And so I really try to read, positive things. I always have my vision board that I've created available on my screen. I can have it as a screensaver so that I'm reminded of the things that are important to me. But yeah, as far as work, I really do rely on a handful of like blogs and newsletters that I think predominantly give me the information that I need. And of course, I always attend the Women in Product conference every year. That's I'm on the board of directors for Women in Product, and it's just my favorite conference. And then I also try to attend like an industry event. So sometimes that might be like an e-commerce conference or something to just keep up to date on what's happening with the industry as well.
Okay. And what do you think is the vital factor that shaped your career in life? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
The vital factor that changed my kind of trajectory in life. I mean, I'm going to be personal here and say, like, for me, it was faith. I'm a person of faith. I happen to be a Christian, and for me, holding on to my faith has been one of the most critical, important things. I wear a cross at work because my faith is important to me. And there were times when I maybe was worried that if I wore a cross, people might, judge me or think differently of me. But I have like now been wearing this for a few years and feel very confident now having it on. It is important for me to hold on to that faith because life is up and down. It just really is. It doesn't matter how perfect you want it to be or otherwise. Life just comes up and down, and there are moments in your work life that are exciting, and there's moments in your work life that are depressing and sad, just like there are in your family life and friends life and all of these things. And so the only thing that I have figured out is how to hold on to sort of this faith that God has me and has a plan for me. And so I hold on to that, and I'm really doing well. It feels like when I hold on to other things, like, hold on to a marriage or hold on to, a family member or hold on to a job title, or if I hold on to anything, really anything else, it has disappointed me or hurt me or, otherwise not been the best thing to hold true. And so for me to keep the most stability in my life, I hold on to faith, and then everything sort of seems to work around that. And my life before that, before I had faith, was very choppy because I was clinging to one or versus the other thing, right? And And so now it's, far more stable because there's a very, very stabilizing factor in that for me.
Yeah, okay. And who's your biggest role model slash biggest influence on your life?
Oh gosh, that's easy. My mom. My mom is, well, I would say my mom and dad for sure, but my mom because she's a woman and I feel like I've followed in her steps in some ways. And so my mom was a doctor and she was also a colonel in the military. She was a colonel, she just turned 75 and she was a colonel at a time where there weren't that many colonels that were women for sure. And there was also not that many doctors in the military that were women. And so, she tells me stories about how when she was in medical school, you weren't allowed to be pregnant and be in the Army, kind of in the Army program. Actually, it was when she first got out of medical school and was going to her first, I think, residency. And she was pretty pregnant at the time with me, actually. And when she got there, her commander, somebody said something to her commander in front of her about like her being pregnant. Is that allowed and not allowed? And her commander was like, pregnant? I don't see anybody pregnant here. I don't see a pregnant person. And my mom was very pregnant with me. I mean, all that to say that, had they been talking about her pregnancy, she probably wouldn't have been allowed to stay in the program. She would have had to leave until, she was not pregnant anymore. But somebody like basically made an exception and allowed her to stay in the program. And then of course she had me. So I just admire her tenacity of, trying something hard, being in a space always that wasn't always necessarily the most welcoming, but being just a kind person as she went through her career. And in her kindness, people were kind back to her and gave her opportunities, and she was able to succeed. So just incredibly proud of all that she accomplished, and she set the bar pretty high, not just as a professional, but as a mom. She was a great mom, and definitely knew that I was loved and cared for, and that's the kind of foundation that we can really grow on top of for sure.
Okay, and what's the most common reason for people falling and giving up in your opinion? Do you have any tips to succeed?
What's the most common reason for people? Okay. I think people they lose faith in a sense, in themselves, and they just stop. I think that the part of failing when you actually fail is when you stop, when you stop trying. And I think, again, we're not always meant to do everything. Sometimes life is telling you this isn't the road. You're on the wrong road. And that is absolutely okay. I have certainly been going down roads and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't the road I thought I was going to be on. Let me go over here. Also, when I have sort of forced things, there's sometimes in life when you're just forcing something that's so like you're trying to move a boulder up a mountain and it's crushing you. And you have to rethink, like, is this right? Like, is this really what's right for me? Maybe there's reason. Now, again, it's a very delicate line, right? Because sometimes you feel like, is it that I'm quitting because I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore, or is it quitting or whatever, or is it quitting because no, I don't think this is the right path. I think I'm pushing in the wrong direction. And I do think that in your heart, sometimes when things get hard and you just get mad and frustrated, you're like, I'm out of here, I'm done with this, you sort of still know in your heart, like, no, but this is what I'm meant to do. I know this is the right path for me, right? Those are the times that you have to really push through and give yourself a new deadline and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go 6 more months on this, 6 more months. And if things don't get better, then I'll think about quitting. You know what I mean? So pushing that out, I think, is important. But there are other times when that still silent, sort of quiet voice, inside says, like, this isn't the right place. You're not in the right place. You need to move, like this is guidance that's moving you to a different spot. You also need to know how to listen for that. And then you can feel confident in moving to a different direction. But I think that's the skill, right? Is learning with experience as you sort of listen to your spirit, talk to you about is this really what I'm supposed to be? Is this really, and again, not to say you aren't going to have hard times or struggle, even when you're supposed to be where you are. But then there's others where I think you just know that this isn't quite right. And I need to find the path that I'm supposed to be on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Yeah. Okay. And then my last question that I have is, do you have any tips for the audience?
My gosh, I think this whole time has been tips for the audience. I would say, again, take care of yourself first, because you're all you have. You got to take care of that body, take care of that mind, sleep, all that good stuff. I would say read something every day, if only for 20 or 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, anything. Just read something new. Watch a TED talk, like something that interests you, that's just novel. I think that's really important. And then I would say, stay positive, find your center, and go for it, and you are going to have ups and downs, and that's part of it. And just enjoy the ride. It's true that the highs are high because you know what a low feels like. And then the whoop, you succeed and you feel proud. And there's just been nothing that I've ever done in my life that made me feel prouder than something that I worked super hard at, right? If something was hard and I did it, I overcame it. That was a proud moment. If something comes like too easy, you're like, well, I didn't have to work that hard for that, right? So take on the hard stuff and believe that you can. Surround yourself with people who believe that you can too, and that they can as well, so that you're all moving in the same direction together. It really does matter who you hang out with, because they can lift you up or they can pull you down. And so you have to be thoughtful about the sort of the groups that you connect with on there.
Okay, so that concludes the episode for this week. And if you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. Check out Miss Anna's LinkedIn page, which I will mention in the description, and make sure to come back to the channel very soon for a new episode. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Dito, you're listening to Arna Sahu, the host of Arna's News. Peace out. See you very soon. Toodles!